I'm meteorologist John Dawson. This is the Fox 26 Tropical Update, and you have clicked on a good one today. We have got a lot to talk about, and not only is it a lot to talk about, it is close to the United States. A lot of times our discussions are quite lengthy, and it's systems that are way out there, but we have definitely some opportunities to see maybe a tropical system, maybe not, but it is right in the Gulf of Mexico. And for those of us in the Houston area, it's certainly something we're going to pay attention to because it does look like it will control the amount of rain that we see in our forecast for the end of the week. We're for sure going to see some rain, but it could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, and it all depends on this Gulf low that we've been tracking for a day or so now. And again, it's one of those things where sometimes it's a little more organized than others. Once it really needs to get a little bit more consistency, and then the National Hurricane Center would possibly decide that it has enough characteristics to meet that tropical cyclone name. And then when I say name, a tropical cyclone, and then it would either be a depression or a storm. And again, that's all up to the National Hurricane Center and what they want to do with it. But notice how our winds have a little bit of a circular motion here. Sometimes it's a little broader than others. Sometimes it's tightened up. And so again, we're kind of seeing that in general terms, that rain is kind of getting wrapped around that. Some of that getting pushed a little bit further inland in towards the San Antonio area and down towards Corpus Christi, away from Houston, basically. I try to avoid making Houston the center of everything, but when you're sitting in Houston, you have to kind of think about that a little bit. And so for those of you who aren't in Houston, thanks for clicking and joining and getting into the discussion. But sometimes it's hard for me not to focus on where we are in the Fox 26 Houston area for sure. We'll continue to watch this type of movement as this low is expected to sort of creep over to the west a little bit and bringing most of the rain confined to the coastal areas overall. So if we want to go ahead and jump right to some of our computer modeling, this is Invest Area 95L. Invest 95L is what the National Hurricane Center has formally labeled it at this point. And running some of the computer models, and as always, we want to remind you that our computer models are really designed to be run on a tropical system. So when we're running on something that's not quite tropical yet, we get an idea of what's going to happen, but we never focus on one specific, or we're kind of looking for that general idea. And you can see that here where generally we're expecting it to continue to move to the west and then make a more northerly track. Exactly how far west it goes, how much it starts interacting with land before it starts moving to the north really makes a lot of a difference as far as where that rain goes. And don't forget, the organization itself will make a difference on how much rain it's creating, and the winds, of course, and some of the other things that go along with it. No matter what, Invest 95, whether it becomes a depression or becomes a tropical storm, it's really going to be a rainmaker and not the other threats that the tropical cyclones send. So here's what officially in the afternoon on Tuesday that the National Hurricane Center is going to say about this area. They're giving it a 40% chance that it would develop in the 2-day or 5-day range. So really in the next couple of days is what they're saying. We in a 40% chance that this would, again, here's more or less the center, anywhere in the orange area, it would develop into a tropical cyclone. So no matter what, it's a low pressure system, and we think continue to track a little bit over to the west, but whether it catches enough of those characteristics and the consistency that the National Hurricane Center is looking for, will it develop into either a depression, remember it gets a number if it's a depression, or would it be a named storm in which it would get a name. So let's look at some of that rain, because this is going to be a rainmaker no matter what. And some of our computer modeling here continuing to show, though, that rotation. You can see that rotation headed towards a little bit south of Brownsville, kicking in all of that rain around it. This is through the day Wednesday. We now move into the day on Thursday. Again, still looking for those darker areas. Notice, though, these areas where we would see the yellow and the red, that would indicate the very intense rainfall. So we're still looking at some downpours, but maybe not as intense that would cause a lot of problems. And then notice as we get into Friday, maybe that system starts to move to the north a little bit like we were talking about, and it's still bringing in that moisture, still bringing in that rain, zeroing in more on southeast Texas during Friday. Now, when I say zero in, it doesn't mean it's something that we're not going to be able to welcome. We still need a lot of rain across all of Texas. So most of our models are all saying that this is going to be beneficial rain that we're receiving. And yes, there will be some minor problems, but overall it doesn't seem to be a overwhelming flooding situation. It doesn't look like it's going to be beneficial rain. So the question is, what are we going to call this thing if it becomes a tropical system? Are we going to call it Bonnie? Well, maybe, because if you'll remember correctly, there's a system out in the Atlantic that the Hurricane Center has already identified as potential tropical cyclone 2. In other words, it's just short of being a depression. Or would it be Colin? So we'll have to really see what happens, because I think these two names are going to get taken up quite quickly in the next 24 to 48 hours. But it's unclear which of these systems is going to get to the name first. So here's what the Hurricane Center has already, again, identified almost as a tropical cyclone, almost a depression. And they do think within the next 24 hours, by Wednesday afternoon, it would be a tropical storm. If that's the case, and it happens before what's in the Gulf, 95, Invest 95, then that would be, this would become Bonnie first and then Colin. But it's going to be hard to say who gets the name first. We'll just sort of have to go ahead and see how that moves through time. Here's that forecast, the cone that they're able to issue on the advisories from potential tropical cyclone 2, as we continue to see a tropical storm on Thursday, maybe becoming a hurricane on Friday that would just kind of get close to those wind speeds that are necessary for that, and then continuing on into Central America as sort of what it looks like this system. So it stays low, stays very southern in the Caribbean, and not really even really moving up near the Gulf of Mexico at all. I hope you've already downloaded the Fox 26 weather app and got that on your phone, because you'll definitely be able to track a cyclone once it's formed. So right now we're not really seeing that information, but once it's identified by the National Hurricane Center as a depression or as a storm, you'll be able to get all that information on the Fox 26 weather app and track that quite quickly. And of course, it would be great if you wanted to follow me on social media, giving you information in different ways on all of the different social media. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, find the one you like or follow all three. Again, it would be good to connect, and we can sort of make that a two-way conversation where I can get the feedback from you as well and your thoughts on some of this. You'll find me at John Dawson, Fox 26.